Yes. Welcome in. It's Balloon Party 101 ESPN. My name's Tim McKernan. That's Jackson Burkett. This program can be watched and listened to on YouTube. It's the 101 ESPN YouTube channel. You, of course, can enjoy it on 101 ESPN, HD1, and the 101 ESPN app. You can podcast it. Dobbs Tire and Auto Center's podcast. You can text in Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. We have an hour. We have to make it count. This is our time. Jackson, what you going to do with it?
I'm going to try my best to maximize the time, really optimize the time. Good. And we can have some fun discussions here. Talk it over with the audience.
Can't wait to hear.
Talk it over with the listeners.
I asked Jackson as we were leaving TMA about 3 minutes ago. I said, how do you feel about your little Piddles? What is it called today?
Today I called it Honey, I Shrunk the Piddles.
Rick Moranis. I said, how do you feel about it? I said, I feel good, but I noticed an octave change.
But if I always
it's like when I'm off on TMA and I text you, how was the show? Show is good.
Well, like, what's my point of reference? You know, like, what's as long as like the we got on the air, to me,
bar's too low.
It's a W,
especially for an HD2 show. So hey, we'll see. I'm just telling you, you feel good about it. Me and the audience will judge.
All right.
See what we got. Question one's going to tell us a lot about this Honey, I Shrunk the Piddles.
Yeah. On the heels of our conversation yesterday about getting emotional with sports, do you think the next generation will have a deeper connection to the sport?
I like this. I kind of thought we were going to break down a 5-0 loss.
No. Well, I'll do that real quickly. Matthew Liberatore, the safest place to be yesterday when the Cardinals were on defense was standing on top of home plate at the PNC Park.
Wow, Jackson. I hope you tweeted that out. You might have gotten some likes.
Yeah. Because I got to remember I'm holding rights. So keep those opinions.
Are you still holding rights?
No, I really wasn't ever. I just, was a little more bullish on the club.
We're both in the same range, I think. It's never like you were saying they're going to win 90 games.
No, but I
85.
I definitely took the over on some things, and I was kind of glossing over some of the problems at the beginning.
All right, I know you were up for some opportunities. I understand it.
Those opportunities have gone by the wayside.
So what's the question here? I like it. I know because it's a macro question.
Yeah. So we talked about yesterday. Can you still get emotional sports? Do you think?
Good topic. I enjoyed the topic.
Agreed.
That was sent in by a gentleman who got $50. Springfield Mud Tosser.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think the next generation will have a deeper connection to sport than mine, yours, or older? For many, their emotion sport is passed down with memories of watching with their parents. Do you feel like the connection will deepen as time goes on? What factors could affect it one way or another?
I feel like the answer is obviously no. And it strikes me as so obvious, you must not think that to be the case. Otherwise, you wouldn't have asked the question, much less had it be the leadoff question.
I don't know if I can definitively say one way or another. I just feel like with how much more you can access it, I don't know. So I bring up access, where like you can watch almost every single game out there. You can follow your favorite player on Twitter or Instagram, know about their home life. There's YouTube videos out, hour-long podcast interviews. I don't know if that will increase people's connection to the sports, or because there's no longer scarcity of seeing these awesome athletes like there once was, if that will make it more of like a everyday thing. Like, oh yeah, Patrick Mahomes did a 90-minute interview somewhere.
Here's where I'm coming from. I understand where your perspective on that accessibility in 2024. And maybe this is coming from the perspective of someone with, 2-year-old is tough to gauge, but a 6-year-old, and how I don't think sports as a whole for this generation is as important as it was to my generation. And I don't know about like my parents' generation. And I'm sure some parents who may be really involved, they would say, oh my God, it's never been more prominent. But the way that it was, which people have heard quite often, is you played every sport, or you played multiple sports, not necessarily every sport, and you played year-round, but you were just playing different sports, and that was kind of your social calendar.
Yeah.
Now, even though I'm kind of in the very beginning of it with a 6-year-old, what I am observing, and I would imagine many parents are as well, is the specialization, the quote unquote select teams. I can tell you that select had that adjective because it meant you made the team if you were good enough, not if your family could write a check, which I believe is what select now means. I had dinner on Saturday night with some friends, and we actually got into the topic of youth sports. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm trying to understand the reason for the success of the model. And when it was all said and done, the answer was what is, at least from a mathematical perspective, a misguided belief by probably more so parents and maybe less so the kids, that the more you play, the better your chances are of being one of a few hundred people who get to play at a level of making millions of dollars.
Right.
And therefore, you need to keep up with the Joneses.
Right.
And what that leads to is, for the parents, a calendar that features nothing but going to your kids' practices and games, and for your children, a lost childhood.
Yeah.
All I can speak to is my firsthand experience, and all I remember is once we started playing 60, 70 games in a summer is when I fell out of love with playing baseball. Mm-hmm. And I was like 15 when that happened. I can't imagine what it's like if you're 7 or 8.
Right.
So the reason why I answer with those anecdotes to your question is I think when you play a bunch of sports, you're interested in those sports and watching them. And now I think with the specialization, I think that decreases the interest because you're playing one sport. And I also think that there is an increased chance that you fall out of love, burnout, at an earlier age because you're playing like you have a college schedule in baseball or hockey. And in an early age, I think kids burn out.
Yeah.
I also think, running parallel, but not necessarily related to my first reason, is I think you will see an increase in esports. I would imagine that will make a number of the 101 ESPN listeners have some kind of like bile emerge from their system and potentially like Linda Blair it. But I do think that's a real thing. Mm-hmm. If I was buying stock, I'd be buying. I don't even know now. It's probably too late to buy that stock.
Yeah, it's actually kind of going the other direction a little bit.
So that's my reasoning. So I feel really confident on that. So yeah, in 2024, so like maybe over the next handful of years, like I'm talking like 2 or 3 years, that accessibility for people in my age range and maybe your age range. But if I'm looking at it over the next 25 years, I don't know. I mean, it strikes me as it's a market I would short.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, in terms of playing it, I get the specialization thing because that is a real thing, and that burnout is such a key to that. I'm really stuck on this, like, because you can see everything all the time and you have more of a parasocial relationship with athletes. And
you love that word, parasocial. Tell the audience what it means, because I don't know what it means. I'm a meat and potatoes guy.
Right. That's not how you talk. Parasocial relationship would be you know a lot about somebody because they're either famous or they do some sort
I'd like to include 2 words if I can. Think you.
Think you.
You think you know
them, right? You think based on what you hear, whether they host a show or are an athlete, or you know a lot about them because they're in the public eye, and they know nothing about you. So you feel like you already have a connection with the person before you ever actually meet them face to face. But to them, you are a stranger, and that's where things can get a little hairy. But I think the parasocial relationship could be stronger than ever because athletes are everywhere all the time, and I don't think that's great for both the athletes and maybe not for the culture in general. Either way, there's no turning it back. I just don't know if that's going to increase people's emotional interest in it or if it's going to make it so it's less scarce, therefore less demand.
I received this text from one of our sponsors to my phone. Specialization in sports now begins in 6th grade for kids. However, there still could be repercussions on not playing on the appropriate teams 3rd through 6th. It's a wonderful industry, my friend. So you got that. Not only do kids, this is from the 636 in the Air Comfort Service text inbox, not only do kids burn out, but I think they overextend their physical capabilities at an early age, which may hurt them down the line. That's from Steve.
Yeah.
Great take. I don't plan on putting my boy in for those reasons. Time is fleeting. That is from the 314. Tim, I manage over 20 teenagers and none of them care about sports. It's all about TikTok and Instagram. That's from the 314.
But what I would say to that is like what used to be Sports Center, where people would tune in for at 8 o'clock and watch the hour-long Sports Center, is now all on TikTok. You can watch a whole Sports Center's worth of highlights on TikTok, all in the palm of your hand. So as much as you want to say like all they care about is Instagram and TikTok, you can still have a really deep connection to sports through those kinds of social media apps.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that's kind of two separate questions. Like that's a sports media observation. Sure. You're talking about. What was the question? Specific connection to sports? Was that how the words you used?
Do you think that they will have a deeper connection to sport than my generation, your generation?
To me, it strikes me as obvious. But maybe if it's obvious, maybe I'm off. It's not like I know, but I just think it's dissipating.
Sure. Because of, and also there's so much out there. Like the world has never been more. There's never more stuff to do, essentially. You know, there's so much to do. I get it. Yeah.
And I also think what I was talking about as far as youth sports goes, I think it can create an aversion. Mm-hmm. Like I don't like it because I associate something negative, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, because of my burnout, my experience, a coach who ruined it for me, a parent, perhaps my own, who ruined it for me.
Right.
And therefore, it's a conscious or subconscious. I don't want to watch that because, God, I remember when I was 10 or 11 and I was playing, we were traveling all the time and my friends were doing this on the weekend, but I was going to a take your pick of whatever tournament.
Yeah. And the more specialization you bring in, the more parents have literal sweat equity, more money.
That's correct.
And time. And that might lead them to be a little harsher on the younger athletes, which is a great recipe to not have your kid love sports.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse.
That's where I'm coming from. I don't know. I loved playing baseball because I loved watching the Cardinals play baseball.
Right.
That's an easy cause and effect for me to identify. I didn't really, the football Cardinals were around before they moved at the same time as I was falling in love with baseball, but they were no good. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, oh yeah, we got a football team. Also, every home game was blacked out for the most part anyway. And so it was kind of like, oh, we have a football team. Don't know. And we barely played it. And so it just was a different kind of mindset than I think now. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I never want to do that. I think I just don't like how stereotypes get applied to generations or, oh, somebody's old, so their opinion's worthless. I mean, F off anything. Oftentimes those people have more wisdom than anybody. But it's a case-by-case basis. Always. So I'm not saying my thing is right. I'm just saying this is what my personal experience was. And so as I look at this, I could be off the mark. I just don't think that sports is as important now I'm talking about super young kids. I'm not talking about teenagers even. And therefore, if you play it out to when they're in their 20s or 30s, it just strikes me as rather obvious and logical that therefore it won't be as big of a part of their lives.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, and again, one thing that I would point to around if you live in the St. Louis metropolitan area, I mean, what jersey do you see more than any around St. Louis?
City.
By far.
Right.
And I'm not saying you don't see Blues sweaters or you don't see Cardinal jerseys. I'm just saying, I mean, it's a bunch of people wearing City Red.
Yeah. Yes, City Red.
Thank you. And, hey, that speaks to something. That speaks to the popularity of that game, and I think it also speaks to a declining popularity with that age group on the game of baseball.
Yeah. I'm just curious, like, I'm not positive that the volume of sports fans is going to go down, but the connection, like, will it be as important to their day-to-day lives?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think what you've seen over the last 5 years, and I bet this applies to a lot of people in our listening audience, and this really isn't a fault of the game. I think at the core, it'll be what I present as my thesis. But then people think, yeah, I just find the game boring now. But what the core of the reason is when it comes to those who go, yeah, for whatever reason, I'm just not into the Cardinals like I was I think COVID combined with how tough it is for a number of people to get access to the games. And so what happened was because of COVID, you didn't have games. And then people were like, oh, I don't really miss it. It used to be at 7 o'clock, give or take an hour or two, I'm watching Cardinal baseball from the end of March through the end of the Cardinal season. That's what I'm going to do.
Right.
We don't have it in 2020. Oh, I don't really miss it that much. Oh, now they're playing again. But I can't get it because I'm subscribed to this television platform. God, I don't really miss it that much. I'm not going to switch platforms.
Right.
And then if you do get a chance to watch it, you go, God, I don't know, because you're not as invested in it. Mm-hmm. That the nuances of the game that I personally love, they kind of fall on deaf ears, and
it broke the routine.
It absolutely broke the routine. Your thoughts on the topic? 314-399-9646. It's the Air Comfort Service text line and the YouTube chat. Tim McKernan, Jackson Burkett with you. This is Balloon Party on 101 ESPN. Welcome back. Tim McKernan with you to the top of the hour. Jackson Bennett Burkett has a series of questions. Question number one, and really kind of the youth sports element of the answer I gave is activated people. That is for sure. Tim, that ain't no lie. I used to have the game on all the time, even if I didn't sit and watch. Now I go to Bally's, not on, it's on ESPN. Then you turn it on and it says tune into ESPN1. It's all messed up. No one wants to spend 15 minutes trying to find the game, only to find out you don't have the channel. Prime one day, Tube, Apple, YouTube. Just give me the damn game! It's from the 314. How about that?
Yeah, I totally get that. The myriad of different streaming platforms or channels that the game may or may not be on is it's a hindrance.
Go ahead.
No, it's a hindrance.
My granddaughter was good at soccer, basketball, and baseball, but was forced to choose because she was on select teams that required all her time. She ended up displacing her knee and quitting. Now, my great-granddaughter had to give up basketball because she's on select volleyball, which takes up most of her time, plus her weekends traveling to tournaments. Their youth is and was wasted because they were forced to give all their time to an exclusive sport instead of just living and having fun. That is from Janet.
Yeah, I know plenty of people out there with the exact same story. And I know a handful of people who played every sport and were incredible at all of them. And I'm always in awe of people like that. We're just naturally good at every single sport.
COVID made us all reprioritize our lives and entertainment options. When everyone almost dies from a worldwide pandemic, baseball just doesn't seem that important any longer. That is from the 636. I'm 59 years old. My internal clock and calendar were set to the seasons of sports. One other thing COVID did was completely disrupt that with different starting times and ending times of all the sports seasons for a couple of years. I still don't think I've recovered and reset my clock. That is from the 314. From the 314, Tim, you hit the nail on the head as far as the difficulty watching the game. So that difficulty watching the game thing, not that that's news relative to people being aware of it. What I think may be newsworthy is how impactful it's been. And I still am operating on the premise, and maybe it's hope, but I do truly believe that baseball is going to have the television situation remedied by the 2026 season. And if they don't, may God have mercy on their souls.
Yeah. Because
this is a monster issue. In the hearings with Bally's and Diamond Sports, that has taken place. That's going on.
Yep.
And it's an incredibly critical thing. Comcast yesterday, there were a number of articles about Comcast and Diamond Sports, and that impacts 14 teams. But Comcast hasn't been carrying Bally's for, I think, the entire season.
Certainly, right at the beginning of the season it happened.
And I'm sure many in St. Louis are going, well, Comcast isn't into the St. Louis market, but it is in Illinois. And, it's when you're talking about nearly half the teams, if people are, Comcast isn't like a little offshoot provider.
Right.
It's just, what an absolute cluster. And I'll tell you this. Now, this isn't something that the NFL has to worry about, and I know the NBA just did its television deal yesterday, but certainly television and the providers have been an issue for the NHL over the years. It's a real cautionary tale, I think, what baseball has done and how major it has been screwed up for other leagues to make sure that they do not go down this road either, and to have a plan B to implement immediately, because I think they are losing not just the kids who are in the single-digit age range and maybe teens. But here, the texts I read there were people in their 50s and 60s, and somebody wrote in about their great-granddaughter. It's not just the younger people who aren't even paying attention. It's older people as well. Mm-hmm. This has been catastrophic with regard to the baseball television situation. Catastrophic. Let's see what we got. I think part of the reason interest in the Cardinals has declined dramatically in recent years is a perfect storm of cord cutting, the Bally's app being garbage, along with a lack of product. By lack of product, I mean we have been spoiled for decades because the Cardinals have always had at least one player or a really good team worth watching. The teams in the 80s were great, and then Ozzie was must-see TV all the way into the mid-90s. After him, we had Mark McGwire, who was also must-see TV. And after Big Mac came, we had the phenom of Albert Pujols. Then, even after he left, we had good teams that were contenders for several years afterwards. The past few years, there's been very little draw. And when you combine very little draw with difficulty to even watch the games, that's a bad cocktail for viewership. It's a nice master's thesis right there. Your thoughts on the topic are welcome. 314-399-9646, Air Comfort Service text line, and then the YouTube chat where people are actively talking it over. The 101 ESPN YouTube channel. Tim McKernan, Jackson Burkett with you. This is Balloon Party on 101 ESPN.
Hello, everyone. This is Action Jackson with a Sports Center update. And that's driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet. Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals lose yesterday, 5-0 to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pirates take the series in Pittsburgh. The Cardinals are off today. They're playing the Nationals tomorrow night. 7:15 is the first pitch. And in NBA news, two-time NBA Coach of the Year Tom Thibodeau has reached a 3-year extension with the New York Knicks, sources are telling ESPN. That was another SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back. Balloon Party, driven by Munganess, St. Louis Acura, Munganess, Burkhardt, Alton Toyota. Tim McKernan, Jackson Burkett with you. Did I just catch a Tom Thibodeau contract extension?
That's right. That's right. And, for people who struggle follically, and, I've been in that
so
boat
passive
before.
Aggressive. So passive
you've been in that boat.
So I'm in that boat.
Our guy, Tom Thibodeau, needs to go cue ball. He needs to shave it off.
Oh, he's like holding on.
It's kind of Homer Simpson-esque where you could count the strands of hair on top of his head, and it just doesn't look good. Great coach, defensive wizard, all about effort.
Do you think if he had Quinn Snyder's hair, people would respect him more?
No, because he's just a better coach than Quinn. No offense to Quinn, but Tom Thibodeau is a master.
All right, Jackson's giving his Tom Thibodeau takes. What's yours? 314-399-9646. Then you can talk Thibodeau in the YouTube chat. Jackson, we've only gotten to one of the Honey, I Shrunk the Piddles questions. I can't wait to hear what we got next. What do you feel good about? Obviously, you don't have to go to two because we're probably not going to go get through all six.
Yeah, but I really want to ask this question.
Okay.
Tomorrow, TMA turns 20.
20 years ago, Jackson,
20 years.
We debuted on TMA, July 26th, 2004.
Yep.
I was 6'3" tall, and I had Quinn Snyder's hair.
Yep. What a time it was, but 20 years, and you've been on it the entire time. Who do you think has made the biggest impact on you as a broadcaster, both with someone you've listened to and watched and someone or some people you have worked with? Also, what athlete or athletes, either directly or indirectly, affected your career most significantly?
Wow. I've been penalized for not looking at the Honey, I Shrunk the Piddles in advance because now I got to be introspective and I can't go to you to buy me time.
Yeah, I can't help you there.
You've personalized. What was the first question? Broadcasters that influenced me the most?
Yeah, listened to and watched and also worked with.
Bob Costas, Joe Buck, Howard Stern, probably Dan Patrick. Mm-hmm. Probably Rich Eisen from the SportsCenter element. Sure. I love long-form interviews.
Yep.
I suppose, in a way, Charles Barkley, which probably sounds weird, but I just recall like 20 or so years ago driving into what was probably KFNS at the time and thinking to myself, I wonder how Stern and Barkley, and I think that still holds true here 20-plus years later, Stern and Barkley are able to say whatever they think, and then they're invincible.
Yeah.
Whereas even then, 20 years ago, before the term cancel culture was a buzzword, perfect. I don't even think we heard that term 20 plus years ago. I was aware that there were certain things that you quote unquote couldn't say.
Right.
So I would want to go places with conversation, whether it be what I would feel like an accurate assessment of a team locally, or just talking about whatever is on my mind, and then it'd be like, oh, it might be tough to say that because you're doing local TV. And then I'd look at my local TV paycheck stub, and I'd be like, this is comparable to when I bust tables at Pietro's. But the public was like, oh, you're on TV. You must be killing it. I'm like, I hate to
Right.
ruin the secret for everybody. And I did. And that was 20 years ago. Those were the halcyon days
Right.
of local television. But yeah, if I think about that from that standpoint, those would be the names. What was the part two or part three?
Something that really interests me is, was there an athlete that you covered that either directly or indirectly changed the way you looked at sports, the way you covered it, your perspective? Something, a singular athlete, a moment that changed your way, whether it's telling you something or just by the way they acted.
I liked that Chris Pronger would not just let you ask one of those awful, how does it feel to questions, or tell me about what you're feeling.
Yeah.
You know, he would challenge you. Yeah. And I think it was when the Blues won the President's Trophy in 2000 was my first road trip with the Blues on the road in San Jose. They were skated like I don't know, a small rink in San Jose for whatever reason. I don't recall why. And I think that the topic du jour, there's always an enemy in the playoffs recently. You can think of Nazem Kadri. But back then it was Mike Ricci, who you said off air you thought was hot.
And, I still do.
Oh, okay, great. Good for you.
Thanks.
For knowing who he is, actually.
Right.
And
I was hoping he just wasn't dead.
Yeah. And I said, Ricci said this, and Pronger goes, "Oh, you're trying to stir the pot, eh?" It's like he knew exactly what was going on. I'm like, yeah, you know what? He's probably right. I didn't think of it that way,
sure,
but he's probably right. I recall when Scott Rowland arrived from Philadelphia and St. Louis, he was sideways with some columnist, I think at the Philadelphia Inquirer. I can't recall who it was. And I remember having a conversation with him in Jupiter. Now, he came over here in July of 2002, but we had a long conversation at spring training in 2003. And I appreciated, and I remember having the conversation, and you might be surprised to hear this, he's taller than me. No, he is. He is. If we're back to back.
Yeah, right.
I think I'm right about at his ass crack. And so he was positioned, I guess it was in the later portion of the day. So we're facing west, and I'm looking up at him while he's talking to me. And I remember he was like an eclipse because the sun was shining right back. But I wanted to be respectful because he was taking this time. Because I think I asked him something along the lines of, why do you hate doing interviews? And it wasn't like, hey, man.
Right.
It was like, I'm just curious what the background is. And he said... I think it was, he didn't mind doing broadcast interviews, but he hated doing print interviews. It was one or the other, but I think it was the print interviews.
I think it'd be print.
Because he says if there's no visual or audio sourcing, what they would do, and this one columnist in Philadelphia in particular, is they would just doctor your words, and they would say you said things that you didn't say, and you either had a choice to defend yourself, which created a whole other problem while you're trying to play third base and hit,
right,
or... you have to ignore it, and then people think you said something that you didn't say.
Can't correct your own record.
And it drove him up the wall because as a guy growing up in Indiana, it's not like he's like, man, I can't wait to be written about or do interviews. Right. I want to be a ball player.
Sure.
And so that was eye-opening to me. And I guess for lack of a better term, it gave me empathy. I think the default position of many, probably some listening right now, going, oh, who cares? They made millions of dollars. But when it gets down to it, I mean, these are people, you know, and they have families and they have concerns. And yes, they certainly don't have money to worry about, but they have other things to worry about. And just because they're athletes, who many of us would love to trade places with, doesn't mean that you therefore treat them like they're inanimate objects.
Right.
So if anything, something that strikes me, as I say it, to be incredibly obvious and basic, those kinds of interactions stand out to me. And even Barry Bonds, when I interviewed him, I thought he said some eye-opening things about, you know, essentially was saying, how come you act, you know, like the way that your reputation says? He goes, well, you don't understand. He goes, I'm not getting anything to do this interview. You're going to get a benefit of me doing this interview, but if I say something then bad, then I'm going to be labeled as a bad guy. And you don't understand. I'm here to play baseball. That's what I'm here to do. We don't get paid to do this. And I remember maybe like a month or two interviewing McGuire later on, and he goes, I disagree with that. And he wasn't like, oh, Barry's being an ass. He's just like, I disagree with it. He goes, because you guys are the conduit to the fans, and the fans are the ones who allow us to make the money.
Right.
So if we were hitting 70 home runs in front of empty stadiums, nobody would care. Right. You know, there are plenty of sports leagues that exist that don't have the following that Major League Baseball did at that time and still does now. So that was the way that he would counter that. But I liked those conversations with athletes, whether they be on the record or they be away from the cameras or away from the microphones, in which they would kind of open up about their thought process. And I'm not talking about, hey, here's how I, you know, picked up, he was tipping his pitches. I'm talking about like the way they went about doing their jobs.
Yeah.
Albert Pujols' work ethic was insane. You know, so when people would go, oh man, he doesn't want to do interviews, I'll be like, yeah, but the guy, he's not like sitting in his locker playing on his phone. He's always either watching video or in the batting cage. I mean, he was just consumed with it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You know what I thought you'd say? I thought you'd say when you and Jim Edmonds were hosting the show together and you're breaking down the Cardinals.
It's a nice play.
And you said, this,
I was
that,
getting
the
all
other.
worked up about something,
Yep.
and he goes, well, I mean, the truth is we're not in the clubhouse, so we really don't know. And I go, ooh, you just blew up the whole industry right there.
Yeah, it's a tough look in the mirror.
Yeah, that was a moment. So I suppose with that, I try to either personalize my opinions and not apply theories, or seems to, the word that got me going a couple days ago, because there's a good chance that what we know, or what we think we know, and what becomes accepted as truth in 2024, I suppose that would be more on social media than anywhere, is actually really the truth. Because oftentimes the most responsible thing a manager or coach can do is keep an issue inside the room and not air somebody out.
Yeah.
It might help explain a reason for something, but in doing so, you'd be violating the trust of the player, or some of the players, or all the players on the team, if you were to air out that this player is going through a personal situation, or this player has this injury and that's why they're not playing well. Take your pick.
Yeah.
So it's a tough spot. So if anything, it kind of gives me, so earlier in this year, it's something we don't hear about damn near at all anymore. I mean, it still pops up here and there, but who is the most criticized guy in St. Louis sports if we were, say, from Jan 1 to June 30?
John Mozeliak.
Probably so, but I would say Ali Marmol.
So, yeah.
And I just feel like, what's
he
you can't, I guess you can criticize both,
Yeah.
but if you're saying the roster is garbage, then I don't know how you can say that the manager is not winning with the roster.
Right.
And if you're saying that the manager's screwing up the games, then you obviously think the roster is good enough to be winning. So you can just be mad at the Cardinals, which is, hey, be my guest, do your thing. But I don't know how you can, concurrently blame both. And you say, well, they're both screwing it up. But now that the Cardinals have played well since mid-May, you don't really hear a lot about Marmol, and you don't hear as much about Mozeliak. But my premise wasn't like, oh, I think he's a great manager. I don't really know how much is really going on when it gets down to it when it comes to managing. But I do know, like 2022 wasn't 10 years ago. They won the division 2 years ago. And that was a really good team. And the team was I feel like there's this revisionist history. Well, the Cardinals are never active at the trade deadline. I'm like, most of the time they're not. I agree, but they did acquire Jose Quintana and Jordan Montgomery in July of 2022.
Yeah.
And those guys were critical to that team winning the division. So, and I don't hold rights. I don't give a damn if they like what I say or if I don't. That's not because I'm powerful. That's not my job, is to appease people. It's my job to give you my opinion, but back it up with some semblance of facts. And I go, well, just because you're unhappy with the Cardinals and your opinion being passive, you can't then ignore when they have been active. And they have been active in the last 2 years at the trade deadline. So this whole thing about, well, the Cardinals and the trade deadline, I'm like, well, yeah, I agree. For the most part, that is the case. But they did acquire two pretty big-time pitchers less than 2 years ago. Yeah. And they did win the division less than 2 years ago. And people were talking about Ali Marmol would be in the mix for the manager of the year. So what, he forgot how to do it in 2023? Or did the team just suck? To me, it's more in the one or the other. And I know the quiche answer is, it's both. But, it's sometimes you got to actually take a stand and back it up with facts. 10:47 in St. Louis. Time check brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers. Tim McKernan, Jackson Burkett with you. This is Balloon Party 101 ESPN. James Carlton, Carlton State Farm Insurance Agency. My insurance agent has been now for 5 years, and I would really like for you to give him an opportunity to earn your business. My guess is once you speak with James or someone in his office, and he has a large staff in Webster Groves, you're going to be going, man, I really need to make the switch. And then you go, but the switch is going to be such a tedious process. No. They do all the paperwork for you. Go online, type his name in Google, and you'll see 378 five-star reviews for James Carlton and his team. Online at carltoninsurance.net or give him a call at 314-961-4800. That's James Carlton of the Carlton State Farm Insurance Agency in Webster Groves. And if your insurance has gone up over the last year, there is a good chance that James can save you money. Just give him the chance. You have nothing to lose. Go online at carltoninsurance.net or give him a call, 314-961-4800. If your insurance costs a leg and an arm, call James Carlton, State Farm. Welcome back. Balloon Party 101 ESPN. Tim McKernan, Jackson Burkett with you. We'll be off tomorrow. Randy Carricker, Dan McLaughlin, Brooke Grimsley, and Matt Rocchio will be doing the show. Jackson has his member tournament. I said, hey, I'd still like to do the show, but I guess that proves that this is the Piddles program.
Yeah, I mean, you can, if you want to come over here and run this board, it's all you, but, that's not.
I would love to.
All right, well, we're not having it. I'm putting my foot down. If I can't be on the air, then I don't want anyone on the air.
Oh, my goodness.
At least during this hour. So
Randy Carricker, Dan McLaughlin, Brooke Grimsley, and Matt Rocchio have to work an extra hour because you have member.
That's right, yeah. And sorry, that's just the price of doing business. Sometimes you're going to have to, take over.
Your thoughts on Jackson's member tournament and how he's going to play this week, 314-399-9646 in the YouTube chat. Where they're talking about French fries.
Oh, what's their consensus?
Penn Station got the skin on it still. I like that. That's from Tiny
Pee. They do. I haven't been to Penn Station in a long time, but they do keep the skin of the potato on the French fry. It's pretty unique.
I'm going to give you a very surprising sneaker recommendation on French fries.
Okay, thank you, Godfather.
Chuck's Hot Chicken.
Oh,
I don't know if they're a sponsor. I don't know if you're a competing sponsor.
Yeah.
I just have to tell you what I think.
Is it like a crinkle cut?
It's like got seasonings and batter.
Oh, I like it. It already sounds great.
Seasonings and batter. And I like that Chuck's Hot Chicken.
I like the seasonings and batters.
I think there are a variety of locations. I think the Wizard might own it or something. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know. But either way, the one that I go to is on Manchester in Rock Hill.
The best French fries I've had all year came from City Park, the little Olive and Oak station where they have the Olive and Oak burger. The fries that I didn't have when I went to the actual restaurant, I don't know what they did special with these fries at City Park, but the olive and oak fries at City Park were unbelievable.
Okay, we got a recommendation. Anytime we get a good French fry recommendation, I'm in.
They're unbelievable. I didn't even need ketchup because I was ruining the seasoning if I put ketchup on there.
Your mom's boyfriend says Chuck's is the best. Man, Great Bape Auto Detailing and Chuck's, your mom's boyfriend. Chuck's boyfriend. And they're on board with KFC's French fries.
Your boyfriend's hot chicken.
Your boyfriend's hot chicken. Chuck's mom.
Yeah.
Jackson, do you have another question here? Because I could break down French fries for 7 hours.
Since we're off tomorrow, I'm going to ask a quick hitter.
This is Jackson's member again.
And then I really want to do the Price is Piddles, the Price is Right.
Okay.
I've made these special Price is Right questions, so I'll ask you a brief question, and then I want to get to that. So the briefest one I have on here is you can pick only one facet of baseball for the Cardinals to bolster up at the deadline. Which are you picking? Starting pitching, relief pitching, outfield bat?
I don't think they can go deep into the playoffs without adding an A-list starter. Of course, it can happen.
Right.
But I just think, and listen, I realize we're, looking back on a 3-game series with the Pirates in which the team scored 1 run, 2 runs, 0 runs. So the take should be, if you know the playbook.
That's fair.
Offense is on. But, the only way the Cardinals are going to do anything this year is if Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado peak at the right time.
Yes.
And that's just going to have to happen because they're not going to be benching them. And so, therefore, to me, if they can get an A-list starter, then it opens things up. And then you need good Sonny Gray to appear in those starts.
That's like it's crazy. Like my exact rationale was like, if the Cardinals are actually going to make a deep run, there's no way they can do it without either, or preferably, like realistically, both Arenado and Goldie getting right to at least a certain extent. So if you're just going to add a right-handed bat in there and hope that will cover it up, that's not going to work. So why not bolster up starters and then hope Arenado and Goldie hit? Because if not, then it wasn't meant to be. All right.
But just something, I had this, and I had it up for TMA, but we never got around to it. I think we were also talking French fries there as well. But Jordan Walker, because wouldn't it be nice?
Wouldn't it be nice? I had 2 doubles yesterday.
Then I must be looking at something different, because I pulled up his numbers just to see how things were going here. I see his last 7 games, 1 for 14 with a run scored, 2 RBIs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, a batting average of .071. His last 15 games, he's had 40 at-bats, 5 hits, $125. And his last 30 games, 9 hits in 58 at-bats for a batting average of $155. So he had 9 hits in the last 30 games, 18 strikeouts. 5 hits in the last 15 games, 12 strikeouts. 1 hit in the last 7 games, 5 strikeouts. The ratio, problematic.
Ooh, okay.
This is a situation. As I think it was Ken Rosenthal or Katie Wu, I can't recall who, I think it was a national writer actually, was saying, or maybe it was Passan, Alec Burleson is giving the Cardinals what they were expecting to get from Jordan Walker. Granted, different sides of the plate. But the point being, they're getting it, but they're just getting it from somewhere that was not expected. Yeah. But what is going on with Walker? And I don't know if that increases the chances of what Ben Frederickson of the Post-Dispatch wrote about 3 weeks ago, about the possibility of trading Walker. But at this point, if the team were flopping around, I think you'd be hearing a hell of a lot more about it. I mean, you're talking about, in my lifetime, and if we just want to go back the last 25 Cardinal seasons, this guy is without question one of the most highly touted, and not just by the organization, but baseball observers of the last 25 years. Take your pick of whoever you'd want to put one. I guess many would put Oscar Taveras. Some might mistakenly put Pujols in there because he was not touted. That's why he was drafted where he was drafted. This guy was blue chip, killing it 15 months ago at spring training, and now you just heard those numbers. The last 30 games, the man has 9 hits and 18 strikeouts and 58 at-bats. So That's a situation. And I don't know if the Cardinals go, he still has some value left. This is the time to cut bait because it's just never going to happen. And that's something to keep an eye on here over the next 5 days.
I bet they're getting calls about them.
And I'd be curious what the internal discourse is amongst the organization. All right, you want to do the prices, Piddles? Got 2 minutes. You better make it count, baby.
Yes. A weekday morning tea time at Whistling Straits in Wisconsin. A weekday morning tea time.
I just like, okay, I haven't heard a verb yet. Got it. You're asking me the price.
The price. It's really tough to do this with one person, but we're going to do it anyway.
$495.
$710.
Sweet mother of mercy.
A Darnell Coles signed baseball.
That should be priceless, but I'll go $14.95.
$34.99.
Good value for Darnell.
6 Foot Club 2.5-inch men's shoe lifts.
Oh, so passive aggressive. Well, I'll be sitting down with management and HR after the show. Although, what's the price? Just because I'm legitimately interested.
$29.95.
That's worth it all day long. Because I'm about to spend tens of thousands of dollars, courtesy of Jackson's gift, to go over to China to get this procedure, and it's only going to get me up to 5'6".
It's a 2-pack.
It's a 2-pack.
You get 2 of them for your dress shoes and your sneakers.
Are the lifts like heels?
They're like, it's like, like an insert, like a Dr. Scholl's insert. So imagine that, and then like a heel on the insert that you put in your shoe. So the back of your feet are lifting you up while your toes
So
are
you're
still
like
on the
walking
ground.
along like you're in stilettos.
Correct.
I do that anyway. All right, BK and Ferrario are coming up next. They'll talk lift prices. For Jackson Bennett Burkett, I'm Tim McKernan. Have a wonderful weekend. We will be back on Monday. You'll get the opening drive for 4 hours tomorrow. This has been Balloon Party on 101 ESPN.